Hi, I'm Terri Bird. I'm joining you today from the unceded lands of the Boonwurrung Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of where I live in Naarm, Melbourne. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and their enduring creative and cultural practice on these lands for more than 60,000 years. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and any First Nations people viewing this video today. I'm going to talk about a recent work, Metabolic Scales, 2022 to 25, by Open Spatial Workshop, the collaborative group I'm a part of. This work was exhibited at the University of Queensland Art Museum in Bianca, Brisbane in early 2025. Open Spatial Workshop comprises Bianca Hester, an artist and associate professor in the School of Art and Design at the University of New South Wales, who lives on Dharawal land, Scott Mitchell, living on Wadawurrung land, who is an artist and lecturer in the Industrial Design program in the School of Design at the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, and myself, an artist and associate professor in the Fine Art department at Monash University. Open Spatial Workshop has been working together since 2003. We have a shared interest in the history of sculptural processes, the materiality of forming, and spatial practices that engage with broader social, economic, and political histories of place. Over the past 20 years, we've produced a broad range of work spanning across sculpture, installation, curated events, publications, and videos. This video was made to accompany a propositional public work that won the inaugural Melbourne Prize for Urban Sculpture in 2005. Our initial explorations focused on the effect of gravity on the way things are formed. For example, Clubs Tennis was an open workshop event held at Clubs Project, an artist-run initiative on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people in Naarm, Melbourne. For this event, we hired a number of tennis ball machines to propel balls through the two rooms of the gallery space and out the window in the hope that the balls would bounce off the wall on the opposite side of the laneway and return through the window. We had a 60 or 70% success rate. In 2011, our interest in gravity and its influence on how things are formed led us to Museums Victoria, where we took a mould of one of the meteorites in their collection. This meteorite was one of a group that struck the lands of the Aranda, Larantja, Pitjantjatjara and Uncertain people in Central Australia 4,700 years ago. Stories passed down by Larantja elders tell of craters being formed where the fire devil ran down from the sun and set the land ablaze, killing people and forming giant holes. As sculptors, what interested us was the way this object registered the physical forces of its formation. Originating from within the solar system approximately 4.5 billion years ago, it's a fragment from a larger asteroid. As an object, the meteorite expresses the events of its formation, the intensity of collisions with other asteroids, its splitting from a larger iron mass, and the vortices of hot gases that cause the ablations on its surface as it fell through the Earth's atmosphere at over 40,000 kilometres an hour. The meteorite also makes apparent the temporal dimensions of matter. Its duration exceeds easy comprehension and challenges anthropomorphic preoccupations. It highlights a much longer planetary memory, well beyond the human. We've cast this object in various materials, including concrete and glass, both of which feature in the video glimpse from 2015. For this video, the concrete meteorite was dropped from a crane on the grounds of a former convent in Abbotsford on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. The convent is now an art centre and housed the gallery where the video was shown. This initial engagement with the geological collections of Museums Victoria has continued to inform our work. There, as artist-in-residence exploring the collection, hearing the stories about it and learning from the staff, we gained a rudimentary geological understanding of the Earth's formation. However, this geologic understanding of the volatile and layered crust we live on is not without its problems. As detailed by Catherine Yusof in her recent book, Geologic Life, USOF aims to shift discussions around extraction and the forms of power it sustains to acknowledge and account for the confronting histories that connect geology and racism, rocks, fossils, and theories about human evolution. How we understand where we are in this century, so impacted by the legacies of colonisation, has a direct effect on how we deal with the consequences of these impacts. Our work is focused on these intrinsic material relationships between past formations and present conditions, and how present the past is in our everyday existence. This partially fossilised log was unearthed in an open cut mine on the lands of the Gunai Kunai, about 140 kilometres south of Naarm, Melbourne, in 2006. The log is from the Yulorn coal seam, lying just below the surface, about 100 metres thick, comprising material dating from between 23 and 11.6 million years ago, formed in what geologists refer to as the early to middle Miocene, when swampy forests covered the land. The log arrives in the present out of time as fossil fuel. Brown coal has fuelled Victoria's electricity grid since the 1920s. As the city grew, so did the hole left behind from the extraction of coal. In recent years, the coal-fired power plants have been closing. The remaining in this area are due for decommission by 2046. The timefulness of the log foregrounds the social and economic aspects of geology, where dispossession and environmental histories collide with extractive industries and the economic benefits they bring. The log was one of many museum specimens we incorporated into the exhibition Converging in Time at the Monash University Museum of Art in 2017. This exhibition was also accompanied by a bus trip to Willamy Morang, where Wiradjuri people have quarried greenstone for thousands of years. This stone was highly sought after due to its hardness and was traded across Australia prior to colonisation. Our research into these objects was collated in a publication that included stories of how they ended up in the collection, the social and political histories associated with them, and theoretical considerations that they gave rise to. One of the specimens we became particularly interested in was a piece of banded iron. Banded iron has been the focus of our work for a number of years now and is the basis of the current project, Metabolic Scales. Early on, our research into banded iron led us to Martin van Kranendonk, who was at the time Professor of Geology at the University of New South Wales, where Bianca works. Martin is a leading researcher into early life in the Archean eon. This is the second of the Earth's 4 geologic eons, spanning 4 to 2.5 billion years ago. It is characterised by the emergence of early crusts and the appearance of the first life forms. Martin has a particular interest in fossil stromatolites, which are found in the Pilbara region of Western Australia, where the banded iron is from. Descendants of these ancient organisms continue to bathe in the hypersaline lakes and marine lagoons of Western Australia. Those present in Lake Thetis are believed to be more than 3,000 years old. The Inuit people, the traditional custodians of the lands and waters where the lake is found, share a story of their understanding of how the world came to be and continues to exist, in which Wakati, the rainbow serpent, came down from the north. Wakati created Kumba Chila, a nearby hill, and then rested in Lake Thetis to lay its eggs before forming the islands off the coast. The eggs in Lake Thetis are represented by the stromatolites. Stromatolites may look like inanimate rocks, however, they have been shown to be layered microbial communities built mainly of photosynthetic cyanobacteria, which trap and bind sand and sediment grains. These microbial mats have played a crucial role in the biogeochemical cycles that date back 3.5 billion years. The atmosphere during this period was rich in methane and carbon dioxide but lacked oxygen. There is evidence to suggest that a range of simple life forms began to harness energy from the sun at this time, performing different types of photosynthesis. Some of these microbes, such as cyanobacteria, gave off oxygen as a byproduct, which was released into the oceans, gradually increasing over a period of 200 to 300 million years. This period is known as the Great Oxidation Event. Initially, the oxygen released into the ocean reacted with other elements such as dissolved iron, causing them to precipitate and settle on the ocean floor. Vast deposits built up over millions of years, forming the banded iron that is mined in the Pilbara today. Later, oxygen escaped into the atmosphere and transformed the planet into one that supports life as we know it. These rocks tell a story of climate and life in which we have been the beneficiaries. The question is, could our current practices trigger a return to the anoxic conditions that prevailed when these tiny ancient stromatolites slowly transformed the orange skies full of methane and green oceans into what supports our lives today? It is questions of metabolism such as this that the elements in the work Metabolic Scales seeks to foreground. The installation included multiple videos and other elements distributed in the gallery space to allow for different sequences to coincide and trigger oscillating narratives. In one corner there was a pair of videos, one screened footage of a Fortescue Metals heavy haul train filmed on Kariyarra lands at the FMG Bridge near South Headland in Western Australia. These trains can be over 2 kilometres long and deliver 34,000 tonnes of ore to the port up to 15 times a day. The first shipment of iron ore from the Pilbara in 1966 was to the Yawata Iron and Steel Company in Japan. Japan remained the main export market for Pilbara iron ore until it was overtaken by China in 2003, but Pilbara iron ore continues to play an important role in Japan's steel industry. On the wall opposite to the FMG train was footage filmed in Matsudo of the Joban and Ueno-Tokyo railway lines. I was fortunate to visit Matsudo at the beginning of 2024 as a guest of the Tokyo University of the Arts and Paradise Air. An exponential increase in steel production in Japan from the 1950s was accompanied by extensive investment in infrastructure such as railways. Another paired set of screens alternated between one sequence showing footage of ore carriers loading at the port of Port Hedland, paired with footage of scrap metal sorting. Both were filmed at locations on Kurrajari lands, Western Australia. The other sequence panned up the face of banded iron formations from Kalamata Gorge, filmed on Binjama, Innawonga and Karama lands at Karajini National Park in Western Australia, and footage of core samples from the Hamersley Basin, filmed on the lands of the Wujak Noongar people of Boorloo, Perth, at the Geological Survey of Western Australia's Core Library. On the floor, resting on either side of a recycled steel beam, were two more screens, one with footage of fossil stromatolites filmed in the Trendall Reserve on Nyamal lands in Western Australia. The other showed footage of living stromatolites in Lake Thetis, filmed on Ewart lands near Cervantes, Western Australia. There was also a single screen with background footage of bulk carriers off the coast of Port Hedland, filmed on Kurrajari lands. This screen also had alternating inserts. One sequence featured bulk carriers entering the port of Port Hedland. The other sequence was a group of men clapping. This is archival footage from 1972, accessed from the Rio Tinto film collection at the State Library of Western Australia. The occasion is celebrating an industrial agreement that hoped to ensure the mining operations would not be disrupted by workers striking for better conditions. Alongside the footage filmed during various field trips was other data relating to iron ore exports. This screen was streaming live ship tracking data provided by marinetraffic.com. We focused on the Pilbara coast and the very distinct trail of green arrows which shows the boats en route to and from China, Japan, and other ports in Northeast Asia. Other data was fed into the work via this LED screen. It had 3 lines of information. The top was the exchange rate between the US and Australian dollars. The middle line showed the movement in the iron ore price in US dollars on the futures market provided by barchart.com, and the bottom line was the news headlines from the ABC, Australia's national broadcasting network. The final 2 elements included a reproduction of a fossil stromatolite. We had taken the mould for this on a field trip to Purungunya Conservation Park on Nyamal lands in Western Australia. This mould provided a pattern which was milled into a piece of mild steel. The second was an appendix. The copies were available to be taken away and were held in place by a piece of banded iron. The appendix included 2 short texts recounting some of the information about stromatolites and their connection to iron ore that I've included in this presentation. And there was a soundtrack that overlaid sounds from the 2 trains, Kariyarra National Park, and the hand clapping. What we hope to convey through the parallel presentation of all these images, objects, and information is the intrinsically entwined character of our existence that is dependent upon the mobilisation of matter within complex geosocial fields. We want to foreground our dependence on events from deep in the past, the debt we owe to the communities that have been dispossessed of their land, more often than not without treaty or compensation, to provide the resources with which the lives we enjoy are built. As Ed Conway writes, not everything in the world is built of steel, but almost everything in the world is made with machines made of steel.